Hello, I'm John Furrier with theCUBE. We are here live in San Diego for FinOps X 2026. I'm joined by Paul Nashawaty with theCUBE Research. As visibility into cost for cloud have been going on, now the AI train is here. Cost visibility, how to get operations lined up to bring in the innovation is the #1 topic. People will be talking about, the vendors are here, the customers are here. They're trying to figure out how to be a leader. Our first guest to kick off our 2 days of coverage on opening night here is Marco Meinardi, VP Analyst at Gartner. Marco, thank you for coming on theCUBE. Thanks for coming on. You're leading the Magic Quadrant. You got one coming up. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, yeah.
All the suspects are here for the ranking. It is a hot market, and cloud has kind of been this slow, okay, we're going to get to ops, AWS, cloud players, hyperscalers coming in, but the AI tokens kind of changes the conversation. Kind of the same game, but different acceleration, adoption's different, it's faster.
Yeah.
What are you seeing? What's different in getting handle on costs?
Absolutely. Well, beside all the things you said, I mean, I think we're dealing with a more complex problem than we had before. I mean, if you think about cloud spend and SaaS spend, we were dealing with spending sources that were people in our organization, like people that we control, that we could influence, and that's honestly the reason why we were launching FinOps practices, right? But with AI, now we're dealing with spending sources that are even outside of our organization. And I'm not just talking about agents that have potentially endless loops of reasoning, right? We're also dealing with end users, right? Our customers. And customers and how they use our AI application, how they prompt them, is going to influence our costs. So we're dealing with different problems that will require different solutions, first and foremost. And then of course, technically we'll have differences in cost attribution, right? With cloud, we were kind of done with tags, right? And a few other strategies that we had to use for share resources, for example. And now with AI, we're kind of losing all of that. The metadata is not there. Yeah. We have to build it into the application. We have to use instrumentation and telemetry to really manage that metadata and then use it to connect cost with business outcomes, right?
You've been doing cloud, obviously cloud's been hot, but that's the cloud. AI's got a lot of on-premises, the data centers are back, you're starting to see AI factories, the adoption in the enterprise by the users is clear, the ability to manage tokens inside the company is clear, cost-wise, buy a server, a rack, or super scale, supercomputer, and then finally, the third is that the crown jewels are in the enterprise, the data.
Yeah.
So now you're seeing cloud and hybrid.
Absolutely.
How has that changed your view on this?
Well, for sure. I mean, there were years in which cloud was going to be the destination, the ultimate destination, and honestly, AI changed that. You're right. The crown jewels, regulation. I actually do not trust certain AI providers, right? Sure, they're going to make me sign a contract, but especially if I'm a foreign entity, my crown jewel is going to stay in my data center. So regulation and not cost is what is causing a lot of AI to remain on-prem.
Yeah, there's definitely, Marco, thanks for being here. This is great, it's a great show, it's super busy. This is what, the 5th year FinOps X has been going on. This is probably the most exciting FinOps X I've seen so far, and it's just opening night, so it's really exciting to be here. There are lots of as John was saying, all the vendors are here, there's a lot of opportunity. Let's talk about the evolution, because I think that's a big factor here, right? When you look at how FinOps has kind of evolved, it was all about sustainability. It was all about governance, compliance, control, which still applies, but differently, right? Now with this little thing called AI popping into the picture, sustainability seemed to have kind of moved out the window. What are your thoughts around that? Because you look at the AI tools that are in place, that's all converging into different ways of doing business. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, the evolution of FinOps was very much into, at the beginning was the practice that we're going to fix the problems, right? We had cloud chaos. We had ungoverned migrations. Lots of things were landing in the cloud that shouldn't be there, right? And so the FinOps force was coming in to fix the problems, like firefighting approach. That was the initial one. But that was good at that time, but then organizations started to wonder, why should I pay all this money to fix all these problems? Why don't I just prevent them, right? So one big change is the shift left, right, approach. Yeah. A lot of the vendors and all other organizations are demanding that. Say, why do I need to pay money to fix them? can I just invest in prevention, right? And so that's why we're getting FinOps into the software development lifecycle a lot earlier.
Absolutely, right? But you also touched on something earlier about data, I want to call it data sovereignty, right? That's a big factor here too, because now there's this kind of divergence between using the hyperscalers for cost optimization for cloud, but now the governance, compliance, and regulations for data sovereignty, especially in Europe and Asia, you're seeing that that's a big push. What do you think?
Well, sovereignty for sure is a concern, especially in that area of the world. You just mentioned, which is where I live, right? So absolutely. So that's a concern. Unfortunately, the technology divide is large, and the US provider are so far ahead than any other company in the other, at least in Europe, as you mentioned, that the choice is kind of is done, right? There's a lot of going on with sovereign clouds and all these initiatives of partnership, which honestly are helping to protect certain aspects, but they're not going to solve the sovereignty problem end to end.
Executives they're investing in AI, clearly. People are doing it. FinOps with cloud, just when sovereignty was getting solved, now you have AI sovereignty. So when an executive's asked you, hey, how do I put FinOps in place to manage credibly my execution? Because you have cloud execution, sovereignty, you see that now, but now AI is also an economy issue. Like I can actually make money with AI. So how do you view that executive question of, what do I need to have in place for credibly managing it?
Well, to have FinOps in place to manage AI, I mean, you absolutely need to have that capability of connecting AI investment to business outcomes, right? Which is a hard problem to solve. It's not a problem we're going to solve this year, right? We're gonna take years to get there due to the increasing complexity we were just talking about. Because that is really what executives need to know to invest further in AI. If they're asked to do so, if they're willing to do so, they really need to know what were the results so that we can make hypotheses about future results and ROIs. That is really the credibility that FinOps can bring to executive conversations and strategic decisions.
So when you see conversations like, oh my God, my token budget is out of control, and people are feeling that today. I met an executive, he said, I hate the word tokenomics. I go, why? Because it doesn't measure the true cost, because you got security and governance, so if something goes bad, there's kind of a cost of ownership, a hidden cost.
Yeah.
What does your research show you around thinking around not just the cost of tokens, short-term problem, yes, but if an outcome is bad, a hack, or say, doesn't hit the value proposition of cost over human labor, what's your thoughts?
I mean, you still have tokens to pay in those bad outcomes, scenarios you just described, right? You have a hack, you have a denial of service, all of a sudden, the tokens are going up. Attribution, that's the key word, because with attribution, you're going to be able to tie, sources of spend, spikes, to initiatives. And you're going to use AI also to work on augmenting the context. The context is going to tell you, by sourcing it from multiple systems, what was the source of that spike, right? So eventually, you're going to be able to tell a lot more if you solve the attribution problem.
So what's interesting though is to build on that, what's really interesting is I was talking to an organization recently and they were talking about gauging their employees by the number of tokens that they were using. I'm like thinking, you're burning money just to see what your employees are doing. It seems like counterproductive to me. I didn't think that was the right approach. But let's talk about, Marco, I know you have your research focuses on the maturity model of FinOps and the impact of the SDLC and the software development lifecycle. There's rules and guardrails and stuff that kind of come into play, right? When you look at the SDLC, you look at infrastructure as code for automation and AI that kind of plays into it. And then there's also AI coding tools, right? So now we have professional developers and we have citizen developers, right? And they're building code, but governance, compliance, and regulations have to be taken into consideration. We talked about the token costs. Now what does that mean from an execution, from a productivity perspective?
I mean, that really changes the game. I mean, as we were saying before, I mean, shifting left is going to reduce the amount of work that will have to go into optimization, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to fix bad decisions anymore if we're able to hijack those decisions in the very first place, right? That doesn't mean that we will not optimize anymore. Business demand will keep changing, right? Business requirements change. So we will still optimize, but for the right reasons, and not simply to fix bad decisions that some developers made because they were just not aware of the financial implication of those.
Yeah, but I mean, well, you actually mentioned it in the maturity model. You were talking about the impact of the data that's behind it. You start using these applications to accessing heritage systems of record with new systems of engagement, right? These heritage systems of record, they're not built the way that the applications and these new systems of engagement are using that data. Is that a concern that organizations should have?
Well, sure, that is something, but again, there's a lot of experimentation going on with AI and MCP to make the data available to the right system at the right time. It's always about augmenting context and making that context useful to support decision making, and at some point, automation. Because if we talk about agentic, automation and AI, right, and remediation, that's something that still requires trust to be built.
You guys do a lot of great work on the technology landscape. I want to talk about the landscape. We've seen, managing hybrid workloads, software true-ups, SaaS and AI workload, cost management, basically software estates. You get the full technology estate now at play because it's a systems, architecture. Are there adjacencies coming together? What's forming in the market? What's happening from a trend standpoint that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's mostly the several disciplines that have, historically looking at assets and finance. They're really coming together. And in the past, we've seen a little bit of a friction and, disciplines getting a bit defensive of their domain. Yeah. And rightly so. They absolutely have some specific knowledge and uniqueness about each domain, but more recently, especially with AI, we're seeing really a lot of more collaboration forming. And ITFM, ITEM, really trying to define the roles and responsibilities, right?
Yeah, and SaaS got subscription, that's got to go into metered.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, ITEM doesn't know how to deal with metered usage, so that's why they call FinOps for help, and vice versa, right? And ITFM is the same. ITFM wants to do executive reporting for profitability analysis, right? It's a different use case from FinOps, but it needs FinOps data in order to enable their use case and serve their audience. Similarly, FinOps needs to understand more about labor cost, especially now that there are AI agents that do some sort of act as digital workers. They need ITFM's help in order to understand the full picture.
Okay, talk about your research. What are you working on now as the landscape's evolving and adjacencies are coming together? Where's that convergence? Where's the intersection? How are you looking at this show like FinOps X? How are you measuring the horses on the track? What's the criteria?
Well, I'm currently working on, we're about to kick off the work for the Magic Quadrant for, we call them still cloud financial management tools, but certainly they're evolving into larger strategic platforms that are going to allow this convergence to actually be implemented through tooling and not just through processes, as we were talking so far.
And for companies trying to get your attention, because you've got the Magic Quadrant, what's your message to people watching who are saying, hey, how do I do my best to share the data with you? What are you looking for? What jumps off the page?
What are the differences between this year's and last year's Magic Quadrant?
Well, last year was all about cloud. This year, we really, as we've seen here, and this is backed by our inquiry trends as well. We're getting a lot more questions in the last 3-4 months about managing AI costs, and so the space is definitely transforming. AI cost management is part of what used to be cloud financial management. Now it's all together. It's some acceleration that we haven't seen before, and that's certainly how it's going to get transformed going forward.
All right, so let's talk about a couple of predictions, right? When we look at what we're seeing in the market, the landscape, we're seeing some consolidation. We're seeing some vendors kind of working together, partnering up, consolidating, even getting bought by one another. What are your thoughts on the consolidation of the vendor landscape in FinOps?
Well, I believe AI will drive more consolidation than ever because it's now cost is certainly no longer just going to be a separate thing anymore.
Yeah.
Right? We can see that with like LLM response quality, right? As being a domain is certainly not part of FinOps in the past, right? But now we need to look at quality because quality determines cost. A bad quality response will determine retries. Retries more cost, right? This means that cost tool will have to partner with observability, get also insights on prompts, caching, semantics tuning. All of that has an impact on cost, but this has been traditionally a domain of LLM observability. So this vendor will have to collaborate or consolidate.
On your research, cloud native, AI native, where's the synergies, where's the similarities, and what's different? Because remember, we got love containers, love Kubernetes, all that work's been done. Where does it get leveraged, and where is it different?
A lot of inference is happening on cloud native infrastructure today. It's kind of the default infrastructure type for inference. So for sure, that's going to enable that hybrid, inference infrastructure we were talking about, which currently still has economic challenges, but a lot of plus in terms of the sovereignty, as we were saying before. So I think that's where the convergence is going to happen.
Thank you for coming on theCUBE. We'll let you get back and get your work done.
Thank you.
You're going to have a lot of briefings, again, queries. Thanks for coming on theCUBE and sharing your perspective.
Thank you. Have a great conference.
I'm John Furrier, Paul Nashawaty, getting all the data here, obviously from Gartner, tracking it, a lot of inquiries on AI costs. It's merging together, adjacencies. The industry's forming and reforming, building on top of the cloud work, but it's happening super fast. We're doing our job to bring that data to you. Thanks for watching.